players have been waiting, so let's head on down to the feature match area for round number 1 of the Apex Gaming Modern Open. We have Don DeLozier versus Zine Brunny. That's Domain Rhinos versus Merfolk, and we're going to be starting here in just a moment when they're ready. I feel like this is going to be a very fast match. I don't know who's going to win, but I think that neither player is really going to interact back and forth too much. There's obviously some dismembers and a couple of things.
Yeah, there's interaction, but the key thing is there's not a ton of card advantage on either side,
Yes.
and that's what tends to make a games go along. You keep finding more gas and keep trading more and more resources, but once things trade down, if they do, it's either going to devolve into a race or a top deck war, and that should end games relatively quickly.
Yeah. Now, a newer addition to the Merfolk strategy is this one drop, and I want you to tell me a little bit about old Rishadan Dockhand.
This is actually from MH2, and modeled after Rishadan Port. So 1 mana, 1/2 Island Walk, and it has that Rishadan Port ability: 1 tap, tap target land. That can also be quite helpful against Cascade, keeping Dawn off of the turn 3 Cascaders.
Right.
There's no possibility to say like Violent Float mana and then Violent Outburst afterwards with that card banned. So yeah, going for a little bit more of that traditional mana denial that has been part of Merfolk decks in the past, but it hasn't been
Mostly
a big part.
in Legacy, because
Yeah.
that's where Rishadan Port lies.
Yeah, and Wasteland and things like that. Don't have access to as much in Modern, so Modern Merfolk traditionally hasn't been as disruptive to opposing mana, but Rishadan Dockhand in Zine's list.
It's interesting to note how well Ether Vial allows you to use mana in other ways, and in Legacy, Ether Vial decks would often play Rishadan Port because of that very thing. So it's cool to see Dockhand showing up. It's been around for about 2 years now, and this is the first time I've ever seen it in play, or in a deck actually. But your Sign of Draco, turn 2 for Don DeLozier.
No Dismember for Zine Brunny. That would have been an excellent reply to immediately answer the powerful 4/4.
All right, this is the other one drop in the deck, the Tide Shaper, and we are going to put an island counter on one of Dawn's lands, and it no longer is anything except an island. So my guess is that is on the
It was the Temple Garden.
Xander's Lounge. Oh, it was on Temple Garden. Is there a way to mark that? So this card's cool, Tide Shaper. The deck used to play Spreading Seas, but now that the creatures just do the Spreading Seas thing, all your creatures having Island Walk gets to work, via another thing that can be played off of Ether Vial.
This is like Spreading Seas, but you always draw a free 2/2.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's also easy to bolt, though. Then you get your land back, right? Or is it permanent?
It's as long as Tide Shaper is on the battlefield.
Oh, okay, cool. Dawn fetches land number 3. Maybe a little bit disrupted by the Tide Shaper, but seems like...
Yeah. Dawn can keep fetching for more shocklands and ensure that she can cast her spells, but it's going to cost her a lot of life, which may end up costing her the game if this devolves into a race.
All right, life total is slightly incorrect. We'll hopefully get the spotter to update that shortly. Dawn has been playing a lot of these fetch lands.
Ooh, and here's one of those main deck Force negations for the Teferi.
Yeah, Teferi Time Raveler, I would not say it's particularly strong against Merfolk, but it does shut off a lot of the counter magic. We talked about this yesterday. It basically necessitates a counter spell if you have a counter spell in your hand, because otherwise your counter spell doesn't work.
Ooh, and look, Scion staying back. So Dawn, recognizing that her life total has already been under duress from her own mana base, needs to be a little more defensive. Dawn needing to read all Svilin of Sea and Sky, a staple of Merfolk decks now. It's the Merfolk God. You got to play it in your Merfolk decks.
Yeah, Savulin is pretty cool. I never figure out how to pronounce it, but 3 cost 3/4. It's indestructible as long as you control another Merfolk, so right now it is indestructible.
Two other Merfolk.
Oh, excuse me, 2 other Merfolk. And then whenever it attacks, draw a card. That's like a really strong ability, but it has even more than that. And then all your other Merfolk have Ward 1. So if it has indestructible and all your other Merfolk have Ward 1, that's pretty great.
Merfolk has always been this sort of synergy deck where you're playing all small creatures and you're pumping them with the Lord of Atlantises and similar cards, but Svilin is a creature that can stand on its own. It generates card advantage. It sometimes is indestructible. Even if it's not, if they can't answer it, it's going to be great. This is a card that really can single-handedly take over games in removal heavy matchups.
Dawn fetching looks like a tapped breeding pool here. Down to 12.
Yeah, just trying to turn Domain on without taking too much damage. I think I see a Leyline Binding in hand.
All right, so that somewhat confirms that Temple Garden was
Okay.
the hit. Here's Leyline Binding. You can hit the Svelun.
Yep. And notably, it gives a ward to your other Merfolk, so no need to pay an additional 1 for that trigger.
Another Scion. Now we can battle Smoosh.
Going to be important for Zine to find one of those island walking lords, Master of the Pearl Trident or Lord of Atlantis. That's going to be the way that he can attack through these Scions. If he had one here and then firing up the Mutavault to get in for 6, that would be excellent.
All right, looks like that is going to be the play, and Dawn's going to be pretty low in life here because of it.
Yeah, but she has a 2-turn clock in the air with these 2 Scions, so if she can find a way to survive one more turn.
A bounce spell, another Leyline Binding, something like that might be enough.
Even just a removal spell on the Lord, a Fire Ice, then you're only taking 4.
But another Lord does the same thing.
You would have to dodge another Lord. And I think it's Force Negation and maybe some Lorien Revealeds in hand. It's a lot of blue cards, and that's not what you want when you need to answer permanents on the battlefield.
Right. An attack for 8, though, so Dawn seems like she has something to keep her from dying here. Oh, or just a straight bluff. Passes the turn. Zine can fire off another Lord here, maybe. Fire up that Mutavault as well.
She's just hoping the Mutavault doesn't get fired up, and instead Zine wants to, like, cast spells that she can counter.
Darn. All right, Dawn Delosier down a game. Zine Brunny, one of your co-champions from yesterday's team event, takes game number 1 of round 1 here. The Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio. We're here for the Modern Open. We have a couple sponsors we'll shout out in a minute, but before we do that, let's take a look at these players' sideboards as they look at them. Dawn is going to be on the back foot, so Ross, let's start with Dawn first. Give us your expert analysis of what you think Dawn's going to be sideboarding here as she approaches this tough Merfolk matchup.
Yeah, so Dawn's sideboard is 2 copies of Blood Moon, 1 Cursed Totem, 2 Dismember, 2 Endurance, 2 Force of Negation to complement 2 in the main, 2 Force of Vigor, 2 Mystical Dispute, 1 Radiant Flames, and a 3rd copy of Teferi Time Raveler with 2 in the main deck. Looking this over, I like the Dismembers. Even though you have to pay life, they're really key creatures, notably those island walking lords that you need to answer. I love the Radiant Flames against a heavy creature deck, and I would probably still bring in Mystical Disputes counter spells, even one that looks that good on paper. This is a mono blue deck, effectively. Are always a tough proposition against Merfolk because they have both Aether Vial and Cavern of Souls.
Yes.
And there's 3 copies of Cavern, 4 vials in Zine's list, but still seems significantly better than cards like Force of Negation and Teferi Time Raveler. So those 4 I would try to get out of the deck for sure. And then you've got 2 Dismember, a Radiant Flames. Maybe only 1 Dispute comes in. Maybe you find one other card to trim to get the second in.
Yeah. On the other side of things, we got Zine Brunny's Merfolk deck. And while a mono blue deck, you do have some of those old Phyrexian cards that you can play, like Dismember that we see in the main deck. What does Zine Brunny got cooking over there, and what do you think he's going to be bringing in against Dawn?
Zine's sideboard, 3 copies of Cursed Totem, 2 copies of Force of Negation to complement 2 in the main, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Spreading Seas, 2 Stern Scolding, 1 Subtlety to complement 2 in the main, 2 Surgical Extraction, and the heavy hitter here, 2 copies of Hibernation.
Oh my God!
Hibernation
Can we get? I don't think we can put Hibernation on the screen in this scene, but Hibernation? Are you kidding me?
Hibernation.
I haven't seen anyone play Hibernation in at least 10 years.
Yeah, it'll bounce Rhinos all the time. So already a clean answer to Rhinos, but when Dawn puts Leyline of the Guild Pact onto the battlefield, all of her non-land permanents are green.
Oh man!
Then Hibernation is just bounce your board.
Why have people not brought Boil back? I feel like if everyone's leylining, then stuff like Boil and Hibernation are just kind of nuts.
Yeah, well, Boil can be awkward because they just put a bunch of creatures on the battlefield and then you Armageddon them and it doesn't matter.
Sure. I guess Hibernation is the pseudo answer. I guess there's no Perish or
no.
What was the one that kills all the white creatures? And it was similar to Perish. We went through a lot of these hate cards in Legacy for a long time, and they just don't exist in Modern too much. But Boil and Hibernation do because they were in 8th edition with Blood Moon.
But I expect Force of Negations and the Hibernations to be in here.
All right. Well, we are underway here for game number 2. Dawn Delusion going to be on the play and starts off with a nice one. Leyline of the Guild Pact. We actually watched her play quite a bit yesterday, and I don't recall her having a turn 0 Leyline of the Guild Pact at all. But I also suspect that she boarded them out quite a bit against control decks because they have ways to get around the hexproof.
Yeah, we definitely never saw one opening hand, but has it here, and Brunny with his best opener in Aether Vial.
Yeah, both starting with a 1-drop that kind of ticks up on counters. And the Crashing Footfall is going to be come down in a little while, but Aether Vial going to start playing out some of these cheap Merfolk here over the next few turns, allowing Brunny to cast basically 2 spells a turn, while also giving him the ability to use his lands to do cool things like activate Mutavault to attack and the like.
So looks like Dawn has one of those sideboard dismembers in her hand. So if a creature comes down, she can answer before untapping, still have a potential cascade on 3, but then it's just 2 more lands and a lore room revealed. So no real threats for Dawn in this hand because that Crashing Footfalls is going to take a while. But with the dismember, she should be able to buy time.
All right, so there's an interesting timing issue between Crashing Footfalls and Tishana's Tidebinder, and I know Brunny's got Tidebinder in hand, so why don't you explain, once this Crashing Footfall hits 0 counters, how is the Tidebinder going to stop that?
So there's 2 triggers that happen, and Brunny needs to know which one he wants to stop. With Suspend, there's a trigger at the beginning of the upkeep to remove a Suspend counter, and if Brunny counters that one, Dawn will just remove the last Suspend counter the following turn and cast the Crashing Footfalls. But he wants to wait, allow that last trigger to resolve to remove the 4th counter, so there's none left. Then there's a secondary trigger of when you remove the last counter, you can cast the spell.
Right.
If you counter that one, then Dawn, there's no last counter to remove later on, and so Dawn will never be able to cast the Crashing Footfalls again.
Great, thanks for letting us know on that. Here's Teferi Time Rattler from Dawn on turn 3. This is going to break a lot of Zine Brunny's interaction if he has any, but Aether Vial does get around that Teferi, but you have to imagine that Teferi is probably just going to bounce Aether Vial, would be my guess.
Yeah, that would work nicely, but then the Mutavault could take down the Teferi, and Teferi is protecting this Crashing Footfalls from Tishana's Tidebinder.
Right, that's true too. All right, here is Subtlety pitching one of the lords, Lord of Atlantis, so it looks like.
Yeah, gotta be Lord of Atlantis.
Well,
in that
it was
card
white border. I couldn't see the art, but it was white border. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Lord of Atlantis.
Yeah, it looked like a 4th edition card.
Did Dawn put it on top? Did you get a good look?
I believe so.
All right. Back Zine Brunny's way. Aether Vial up to 2. Draws the second blue source, and now we can start deploying the double blue Merfolk in hand and activating Aether Vial. Here's
both players come in with very strong basic land games in this match.
Oh, yeah.
Dawn with a matching nice set of John Avon invasion basics, and Zine, those are original Portal Islands.
Nice. I do like the Avon basics. We talked about this a little bit yesterday.
That Wheatfield Plains is iconic. Okay, here comes the Teferi again.
Leaving open a Temple Garden, but with Leyline of the Guild Pact in play, it's all types.
Yeah, really just 1 mana for Dismember. And that's important here because we can bounce the Sviolin. If Zine has a creature to Vial in, Dawn has an answer to it, so Zine needs to fire up the Mutavault, which will stop him from recasting this Violin next turn. Then we could take the Vial up to 3.
Yeah, probably wants to take the Vial up to 3 for the Tidebinder on the Crashing Footfalls. So it's going to be up to Brennan whether or not he wants to actually stop the Footfalls. I don't think Dawn has a way to keep that from happening.
Dawn hesitating there, thinking about whether or not she wanted to dismember on her own turn or Zine's turn, and that's something she probably should have figured out before she played the Teferi, because the pause is a signal to Zine that she has a 1 mana piece of interaction.
All right, another Mutavault picked up for Brunny. These Mutavaults are extra powerful with the Merfolk lords like Master of the Pearl Trident. Let's get Master of the Pearl Trident on screen because we know many of us old heads know Lord of Atlantis, but Master of the Pearl Trident is essentially a virtual reprint that lets you play 8 copies, and this was printed into standard, sometime in the last decade. I don't remember exactly what set, and it basically just gave Merfolk new life in every format that it existed because it just gave you redundancy, and that's really what you need in creature-based strategies is redundancy.
Yeah, and Lord of Atlantis has always been one of the better cards in their deck, so getting 8 of them is quite nice.
Okay.
In fact, Master is slightly better than Lord of Atlantis because it doesn't pump your opponent's Merfolk.
That's
that
fair.
ends up being relevant.
That's fair. All right, so looks like we're going to play a Lord of Atlantis and attack with both
Ooh.
the Mutavault and the Master of the Pearl Trident.
Interesting. So Dawn has the option to dismember the Mutavault that's attacking Teferi, save her own Teferi, but she uses dismember on a weaker target. And with the Vial in play, I don't think the Teferi is doing a whole lot because it's not stopping Zine from playing his threats at instant speed.
All right. Well, it looks like there was a judge call, but then Dawn said, "Oh, never mind," and then is going to go ahead and just cast Dismember on Master of the Pearl Trident, the one attacking face, and letting the Teferi die because the Vial on 3 means that Tidebinder cannot be stopped by the Teferi anyway.
Yeah.
So, heads up play from Dawn to save a little bit of life, but unfortunately, I believe she's about to get busted up pretty
Well,
bad.
but she has a Fire Ice, so if she puts the remove a counter trigger on the stack and now ices the Vial with that on the stack, I think this is what she was calling the judge about.
Oh, wow.
Then she stops Zine from having the window to counter the second trigger, which is the one he needs to counter.
I hope that that's what happens. This would be so cool.
Yeah.
I think that she's sniffing it out. She's really in the tank about it, taking a swig of water about it.
Now, Zine can still Vial in the Tidebinder and stop the remove a counter trigger, which will stop the Rhinos for a turn.
Right.
And that's a lot of tempo, given that he'll then have 2 Mutavaults, a Lord, and a Tidebinder on the battlefield with Dawn at 13.
Yeah. And
So-
using a Fire Ice to tap a Ether Vial instead of killing the
Yeah.
Lord of Atlantis.
So that Dawn may just not be able to play around a Tidebinder here because of all the pressure that's already on the battlefield and the damage she's already taken from her mana base.
Okay, so the complex interaction that Ross alluded to earlier with the timing issues of the crashing footfalls and such, it looks like Zine Brunny has stepped away from the table to ask a judge about it, and when he comes back, we will continue the match, and hopefully we'll get them a short time extension. This is a very complex scenario, but if you played during Time Spiral Block,
2 people that clearly didn't draft enough TPF.
they were probably not born when TPF was out, man. I don't know if you understand how long ago that was. It was literally 20 years ago.
They need more errant ephemeron in their life.
Dude,
Okay.
I was a Dustwood Boarhead.
That was the next best one. I was a big fan of Corpulent Corpse.
Corpulent Corpses.
Because, I was
Aaron
taking
Ephemeron? No one ever passed Aaron Ephemeron. That one
yeah,
was
they
like
shouldn't
the best
have.
one.
It was the best common.
Yeah. I remember all the suspense stuff was so cool with Tromp the Domains because they would come in with haste and then you would just give everything +4 and trample, smush you.
I liked setting up big empty the warrants.
All right, Brunny got his answer, and now we're still in the upkeep. The trigger of crashing footfalls is on the stack, and I
This is
believe
the trigger to remove the time counter. That is on the stack. Dawn can respond to this, ice the Vial.
that's a good catch. I did not catch that, and Don and you both caught it, and I'm impressed from both of you. So let's see.
Not my first rodeo. If it was a rodeo, it would be my first rodeo.
Yeah, that's why they say that. Okay, one counter coming off, but before it does, ice targeting Ether Vial. And now there might be another judge call where Zine wants clarification of what happens here.
It's two different triggers, Zine. But honestly, stopping it for a turn, I think, is good enough. Just get the Tidebinder to play.
I agree.
This is an attack for 12 next turn with the 2 Mutavaults.
And the
Tidebinder
2/4/4s
the Lord.
cannot currently block because of the Lord of Atlantis.
Well, they could block the Lord,
Right.
but nothing else.
I know the Lord's always waiting in the wings, though. You know that. No one ever gets to block a Lord of Atlantis.
That's why you got a surprise crop rotation your only island.
Oh, I played Infect, and I've done that before. It felt kind of bad, honestly, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes you got a crop rotation in the land that's got spreading seeds on it. All right, so complex judge interaction. They're both asking some questions. We've already kind of outlined what we know is going to happen, what we think is going to happen. Zine Brunny just getting clarification on when what needs to happen here, and it looks like he is going to go for the line Ross suggested with just countering that
Ooh.
first. Oh,
That's a violent.
that is not what I was expecting.
Okay, so we're going to get some Rhinos here. Now, Sviolin and the 2 Mutavaults can still attack through the Rhinos, and that's 10.
Yeah, another Lord is game, though, if Dawn does not have a removal spell.
Hard to get another Lord onto the battlefield and still attack the Mutavaults because the
true.
Vial's on 3. So
Oh, what was the Mara Rigiri?
Yeah.
That was the one people played for a long time, but that one has fallen out of
Yeah.
favor.
And if Zine were to hardcast another Lord of Atlantis or Master of the Pearl Trident or a Dalkin Hexcatcher and activate one of the Mutavaults, that would be an attack for 12, so still one short.
Okay, well, Don's hand is pretty weak here. We have just a couple lands and a Lorien Revealed. Those two 4/4s aren't going to be able to block very well.
And I just really didn't find much in the way of removal, and honestly, like, probably needed to use the Fire Ice to deal with Lord of Atlantis.
Yeah. But considering the draw, I'm not sure that she actually had a route to victory.
Well, if you kill the Lord of Atlantis, now none of the creatures can really attack.
But if you kill Lord of Atlantis, then the Tidebinder counters your two 4/4s.
If there was a Tidebinder,
There is a Tidebinder. I
Oh,
saw it.
okay.
I told you. I told you, Ross.
yeah,
Don't ever
if we
believe
had
me.
Tidebinder and Svilen, then
All right, Vile stays on 3.
and there is another Lord.
Yep, so we can play that other Lord, fire up Mutavault. Everything's got Indestructible and Ward 1. So,
Fire up Mutavault. So Mutavault's a 4/4. The Lord of Atlantis is a 3/3, and the Svilen is a 5/6. Tagging for 12.
smooth.
And draw a card. They all have Island Walk. All your lands are islands.
Dawn just gives up.
Yeah,
GG.
nothing
Zine
going
Brunny takes it down 2-0. A very easy victory for Merfolk there. One that was somewhat predictable considering how strong Merfolk seems to be against like mid-range blue decks.
Yeah, the key is Dawn never drew Leyline Bindings. Like, she needed interaction for creatures, and Leyline Binding is the main removal spell in the deck. Never
Yeah,
drew
but she
one.
also drew a Dismember and she drew a Fire Ice, and the Dismember killed a Lord, but the Fire Ice had to do some tricksy stuff and wasn't used as a removal spell because of it.
Yeah, so really only had one removal spell. You need more than that to beat Merfolk.
Yeah. All right.